Welcome back to part 2 of the Global Sales Leader podcast with your host, Jason Cooper. I'm a sales trainer, sales coach. I'm a sales strategist as well. This is all about insightful leaders and leadership. This episode is especially dear to my heart. If you want to understand mastery, or as much as you can get to mastery, it's one of the best sales trainers and sales coaches out there, Brian Flanagan. So this is part 2, and we're going to carry on talking about stories. We started talking about stories. Now we're going to carry on with the rest of this, where we're going to dig deep into a little bit more about sales strategy, how to implement it, and a lot of stories about Zig and how Brian worked with Zig Ziglar for over 25 plus years. So enjoy the rest of this. I know you will enjoy it. I totally concur with you. I know when I first started out in central London, we only just about had computers, laptops then, but we were just given a Rolodex and the yellow pages or just door knocking. So you had to influence the receptionist or the secretary or whoever it was. And I had the initial square mile or the financial district of London to go out. And that was my patch initially. And then I had the west of London. And I went, oh my goodness. And that's when I first started. Mm-hmm. But my trainer and coach was slamming his hands on the floor. He didn't teach that well. Only until I had a mentor who had years of experience, was 20, 30 years older than me, that came back and mentored me and really sort of helped and shaped me and gave me some really good practical advice. Same as yourself. So let's talk about your mentor, because I know you've been posting a lot about yourself and Zig back in the day. So how did he really, we spoke about it a little bit, and I'm playing with my hands like I'm doing a bit of putty or clay here. So how did he really craft you into where you are now?
A couple of things happened. Once I read his book, I did not know he had recordings. I did not know. Now, for you young people, you're calling them CDs, but back in our day, we had cassette tapes. I did not know he had cassette tapes. I just thought he was an author. I didn't know for 9 months from the time I read the book to the time I went to see him speak, I didn't know he was a speaker. Somebody had sent me a set of his tapes and I started listening. Then I went to hear him speak, and his philosophy was more than just do good. It was be good, be a good person. Base your reputation on your integrity. And one of the things that I saw throughout his life was that he was the most consistent man I've ever met. We were in New Zealand. We had three engagements. We were doing public seminars. The seminar sponsor did not do a good job in Christchurch of selling tickets, and he was going to lose a lot of money. So Zig sat him down, and I was privy to this. He sat him down and he said, let's cancel this. You don't need to lose any money. We'll forgive some of this in the contract. And he let the man keep his dignity.
That's good.
We had a signed contract. He could have really hurt this guy financially, but he knew he was a good guy. He had put forth the effort. So instead of doing 3 engagements, Zig moved back to 2 and lost a lot of money with the engagement, as well as all the product sales that Zig sold in the back of the room.
Yeah,
I've seen him at his 45-year-old daughter's gravesite. I've seen him counsel troubled employees, and he was always consistent. And one of the things that I know I'm not that consistent. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it came easily for him. I don't think it did, but I saw the consistency in every interaction I had with Zig. And that's a standard that I'd love to adhere to. I aspire to it, but I know I'm not that consistent. He always was.
Yeah. And it's good to model yourself on people, but then you have to take it into your own self, really, to make yourself who you are. Like Zig was out on his own, and he was an entrepreneur, Tony Robbins-ish sort of person. The outlook, he's not Tony Robbins, obviously, but he's a different person. But again, you learn the things from him, but you don't want to imitate him to a degree, because you are who you are. You take the major assets from him. You go, thank you very much for teaching me. But now I'm working from my inside out, and I'm being congruent with my own way and being of a person, as opposed to me just mimicking you like you would your favorite song, I don't know, like John Lennon or the Beatles or Elvis or whoever that might be in your head. But really, you have to be your own self. You have to make your own version of whatever that might look and feel like. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you for that reminder. One of the things that I will tell everybody, and you know this from being in sales for a while, the tendency is to look at your best salesperson in your office, kind of your role model, and thinking that you've got to be like him or her.
Yeah.
Well, the best salesperson in my first IBM office, once I found out what kind of guy he was, I didn't want to be like him.
Yeah.
Now, his sales were good, but he was a quality salesman, but he wasn't a quality man. So what I learned from Zig is that if the principle is true, you can fit your values into that principle. And you don't have to be the guy that slams his hands on the floor, or maybe the first sales manager that you said that you had. You didn't have to be like him. So if the principles are true, then they work for me or they work for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always find that's, and I've learned that over the years, it's trust your gut feel, because that's the thing that's right. Apparently there's neurons in the gut that connected to the vagus nerve to the brain, and you have to trust your gut, because that first instinct, whatever it might be and look and feel like, that's the right one. And you go, and sometimes we lead ourselves out of that, because we talk ourselves out of that in our brains, and however that self-dialogue actually is. But talking about that self-dialogue, what makes success? What makes a successful salesperson, but what also makes a successful presenter as well? That's a double-barreled question there, so you can take in whichever direction you'd like.
Well, I think it parallels most things, not just an individual profession. There was a study that Zig quoted from, and this is from 1990. But what the Forum Corporation did, they studied these 1,600 salespeople and took the top 650 or so, and they discovered the two factors were ego drive and empathy. And they're not mutually exclusive. In other words, you want to win, but you know you have to bring people with you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was telling and very anchoring, to use your point earlier, because you want to be ambitious, you want to be driven, you want to help people succeed, reach goals. But you also have to understand there are people around you that you need to be sympathetic, empathetic to, and they said ego drive and empathy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's not just the ego drive, it's the fact that you need to be connected to people.
I totally concur with that.
Any profession.
So what about the self-dialogue, as opposed to the external things, which is that? But I'm thinking about the self-dialogue, that the things that you say to yourself without actually saying it.
So here's my take on that. Having raised two children, having watched my wife raise two children.
That's right.
She would tell the kids, wait a minute, you're criticizing yourself. You're not being fair. I'm thinking, wait a minute. You have to stop being a self-critic when you stop being fair. And that helped my self-talk.
Yeah.
Because self-talk is very, very destructive.
It is. It can demonize you. It can push you out, especially when you've had a bad day on the phone, or you've had no after no after no after no, and you pick yourself up and go no again, or rejection here, there, and everywhere. And it was like me today, and I'll give an example, is I've been designing a long course, and it's been ahead of me for a while. And then today they cancelled it for the third time. I was a little bit annoyed, but that could have sabotaged my day. It could have sabotaged my week. It could have sabotaged everything. After that, I just got over it very quickly, because look, if I continue with that and I carry it on with me, I just have to let it go and then just get on with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So that's my self-dialogue. It's something that I've taught myself. It doesn't always work, because I'm only human at the end of the day, and like stuff happens and bullshit comes into your head and whatever else. And it's only catching yourself. And I think it's at the extreme moments that you catch yourself and go, all right, let it go and let me carry on and move forward, because there's other things happening.
I agree. I'm a big believer that you can criticize yourself, but it has to be based on evidence.
Yeah.
You shouldn't criticize other people without evidence. You shouldn't criticize yourself without evidence. Your self-talk dictates that. When he said that, when Zig in his book said you can't consistently perform at this level, if you consistently see yourself down here, that's self-talk. And he goes on to quote Dr. Joyce Brothers, that your self-image determines your success, your profession, who you choose as a mate. It's not an exaggeration to say your self-image determines your success in life. And that was on page 49 of the book. I'll give you a quick story by Zig that illustrates what you just went through, Jason. He's in the Kansas City airport. He's been speaking all day. He's tired. He wants to come home. He goes up to the counter, he gives his tickets, and the lady says, that flight's been canceled. At that moment, Zig, and this is his story, Zig said, I could have jumped up and down and snorted and shouted, what do you mean it's canceled? I've been working all day. I want to go. I had a flight that I had paid for this ticket in advance, and you're telling me it's canceled? He could have done that. But the next flight still leaves at 9:30. He could have jumped up and down and said, oh, come over, people. Look at this. Our flight's been canceled. He could have said that, but the next flight still leaves at 9:30.
Yeah.
His point was this: you can cancel my flight, but you cannot cancel my day.
I love that. That's such a wonderful quote, and I'm going to steal that, because
I have.
It is.
Jason, if you steal,
it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, if you steal from me, you're stealing twice.
Yeah, but it's so true, because using that, people, there's a thing called transference of communication. Is I can say negative stuff to you, and it transfers to your head, and you own that then, as opposed to going, all right, well, I'm just going to let that go, because that negative stuff that the other person have is in their head. So they own that space, not you. So when stuff like that happens, like the flight gets cancelled, there's nothing you can do about it. Right. So you have to let it go. All that sort of stuff you have to let.
One of the great quotes is from the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was elected president 4 times back in the 30s and 40s, and they had to pass a constitutional amendment to say presidents can only serve 2 terms in the U.S. So his wife said, Eleanor Roosevelt once said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission.
Wow. That's very powerful.
That criticism. Yeah.
So have you read, I'm sure you have, Think Rich, Grow Rich, where Napoleon Hill went out and interviewed, it's about a 100-year-old book, and he went out and interviewed the most successful people in the world at that point. And he asked them what success was, how you do it, what was the keys, this, that, and the other. Like the context back 100 years ago, and the life and the years, and that was different then. But the principles are still the same all the way through. Nothing changes. And sales doesn't change. You're still interacting person by person. and we still communicate. We are effective communicators. And I think you've mentioned that before. Like technology's gone in leaps and bounds, and it helps us, but it also can hinder us. But we're still the same people, and we still have to communicate with someone else.
That's right. I believe we're still in the people business. Now we have technology that overrides that sometimes. We have technology that stands in the way of that we hide behind, as you said earlier, we hide behind that. Even if we're communicating technology-based communication, we're still helping somebody.
Yeah.
When people tell me I didn't like selling this product because it didn't help anybody, I'm thinking, wait a minute, time out. No product is sold unless it helps somebody. You didn't like the product, not because it didn't help anybody. There were other reasons you wanted to leave that sales position. But if you're producing a product that doesn't help, you can be out of business. So every product helps. You've got to find out how, what, and when.
Help others to get what they want. And I've stolen that from the mighty Zig behind you. And I think it was from Tom that actually said that. So coming along leaps and bounds, what would be your proudest achievement along the way? Unless you have a couple of them or few of them or many.
Well, personal is my family, obviously, but on the professional side, I had a chance to work for the two of my heroes. IBM from 1970 to 1984 was a top 3 company. Yeah. Every year, it's a top 3 to work for. Sometimes number 1, sometimes. But in the 14 years, they treated me very well. And I was so blessed to work with them. I didn't have the best grades, but they hired me because I had a work ethic. Yeah. And I learned show up on time, and show up dressed to play. I learned that from my father. IBM hired me on that. Secondly, professionally, I had a chance to spend 29 years with a man who was at the top of his craft, who was the best at what he did, elevated up there by his peers, not by his fans, but Zig's peers knew he was the best. Mm-hmm. And I had a chance to work with him. And that's from the international IBM machines to the Zig Ziglar Corporation, from 35,000 people going to work for a company that had 21 people when I joined.
Yeah.
What a great step up. So those two companies have really, solidified my professional achievements. And then within that, Jason, it's all the people that I've met from IBM when I trained them throughout the nation. When I travel now, I try to hook up with them. I try to connect with them and say, let's meet, let's get together for coffee, whatever. I'm only going to be on tap a little bit. To the IBM Corporation, to the Ziglar Corporation, I traveled for 36 years, and the same was true. I had a chance to meet people all over the world, but primarily here domestically, I've made some great friends.
Mm-hmm. So now you're the master of your craft.
Pardon?
Now you're the master of your craft. Now I
appreciate that. I'm not sure I'm the master of my craft, but I tell you what, I can make a heck of a sales call.
Yeah, sure you can. I'd love to listen in or be at the other end or whatever. And I think that's absolutely awesome. Something that I wanted to ask you, actually, if you were interviewing yourself, what sort of questions would you actually ask Brian Flanagan if you were saying it to yourself?
One of the questions I would ask is, what advice would you give to a new salesperson? Because we have a lot of people that don't want to be professional salespeople, but have to be professionals who can sell. So what would you say to a person that's now wearing a sales hat? And what I've come up with, Jason, is that develop a process. Develop a communication, client-facing process that allows you to know where you are in the process and where the buyer is in the process. And that'll accelerate your career. Product knowledge is a given. You're going to learn product knowledge.
Yeah.
But how do you take that product knowledge and link it to somebody's needs? You need a process to do that. Yeah. So that's the number one thing I would say to a new salesperson or a person entering the sales arena. Get a process that works for you and your industry.
And what other things would you say to yourself if you had another Brian Flanagan? God help me if there's two of you, but if you was to have that microphone into you now, like a commentator, and that's thrown into you like that, what else would you say to you?
Two things are going to drive your success. Learn your profession and respect your profession. A lot of people are selling and they don't respect the profession. It's their job. It's not their passion. It's not their career. It's not their calling. But I know people that have that mindset that still want to help people.
Yeah.
Well, what a better way to help people than selling? At the end of the day, you help people reach home safely. You put people in a position they can be successful individually, company-wide, as a parent, as a son, as a friend. Selling has taken me around the world.
Yeah.
Selling's allowed me to pay for the college that my kids wanted to go to versus what I could afford to send them.
Yeah.
So I respect the profession. I did not always respect the profession, but I think selling is a hard way to make a living, but I can't think of anything I'd rather do.
Absolutely, because you love it. And it's also always, I think, as you said, the acronym earlier, but it's also connecting your passion to your purpose and to your dream and how you see and visualize stuff, because we all visualize stuff. But if you can visualize what your dream is, how you're motivated to do that. It's taken me a little while because I had some sales jobs that I was like a square peg in a round hole.
When you were selling in South London, West London, what were you selling? What products did you sell?
I was selling copiers, digital copiers, and I didn't like it, to be honest with you. Back then, I wanted to get into sales, and I was given an opportunity, and I grabbed the opportunity. But because I had a bad start in it, I just didn't feel it until I changed my job, and I felt it.
Yeah. Well, now this is what I did for 12 of the 14 years I was with IBM. I sold typewriters and copiers. So I understand you were knocking on doors when you were trying to replace Xerox or IBM or Kodak or whatever you have over there. And that's a tough way to make, especially by the time you were doing it. They had a lot of competition. So if you can live through that, you can do most anything.
I think so. Yeah. I think if you can sell that, and I know it's one of the, it was the biggest challenging market out there because everyone was doing it at the time I was doing it. But then I changed to doing websites and stuff like that, which I liked because I just felt it. And I go, well, there's definitely a need here. So I liked it and loved it. And I had that direct connection. So if you were to give some golden nuggets forward to people in sales, and especially people listening to us right now, what were those key things? You give them a flurry of wonderful stuff, but what are the key things that you could give?
You never graduate from selling. You need to be a constant learner. Number two, you're going to get into a sales slump, especially now, Jason, where we're working remotely. We're not going back to the office during the day and maybe getting some encouragement from our peers. Now we're working remotely. So two things happen. You get in a sales slump, number one, because you've lost your basics. And number two, you've lost your passion. So I would find a way to have some type of accountability. What am I doing now that I should be doing that I used to do? What should I replace bad habits with good habits, as Tom Ziglar would say? And secondly, let me go back and visit a client that really is excited about my product so I can get my passion back. Yeah. I forgot why I do this because you get beat up out there.
Yeah.
Sales rep goes into the marketplace every day and they risk hearing no.
Yeah.
Not every profession has that challenge.
Yeah, it is.
And we get so depressed in the States. We say we get so depressed that we look like the picture on our driver's license.
Mugshot.
So we've got to build ourselves back up. Yeah. Go back to the basics and find your passion. Rekindle that passion.
Yeah. And like it has been a bit of a challenge over the last 18 months or so. And people go, as we spoke about that mindset and you rattling around in your own head, But the likes of yourself and myself, I've been sitting on my own for ages. So it makes no difference to me. But I do miss the seeing people and having that face-on-face communication with people. It's coming back, which is good. And I've run a few courses now face-to-face, and thank God, that feels incredible.
Yeah, you're back in the spotlight. There was a group of trapeze artists or circus performers, and they were tightrope artists, the Flying Walendas. In 1973, the founder, Carl Walenda, was in Puerto Rico, and he was rocking across a wire between two buildings in downtown Puerto Rico, and a gust of wind came and knocked him and killed him. His quote that I love, being on the wire is to be alive. Everything else is just waiting. So when you have the passion to go out and work with people, interact with people, find their needs, solve their problems, leave them better than when you found them. That's being on the wire. Yeah. That's your true passion.
Wow, that's an incredible statement. Brian, you've been absolutely phenomenal today, and I really humbled and really appreciate all of what you've said today. And I know for the listeners, regardless of whether they're old, young, middle, or wherever they are in their career, they can take some compelling things from what you've suggested today and all those golden nuggets, because they are golden nuggets. If this helps someone sell something tomorrow or add value forward to them, then both of us, we've done our job.
Thank you. Yes. And I appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion for your profession. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've listened to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. I have a phenomenal person today, Brian Flanagan, as my guest. And I appreciate everything that he said. Thank you so much.
Good day.